All right. First off, I want to thank everybody for coming in person and everybody that we have here on Zoom. I am super excited for what we have for you guys today. I'd like to introduce somebody very close to me, mentor, father figure, somebody very close that's family to me. And I'm very excited to be able to introduce him to my DPW family. Just to rattle off a few notable things, just so you should know. Just recently, former vice president of the NAACP SF chapter, where he headed it with his boy Amos Brown. President of the board of the African American Art and Culture Complex in San Francisco. Shout out to Fillmore. Former president of the EOC in San Francisco. Former executive director of WAPAC. I could probably continue to rattle off, but you sort of get the idea. I want to give a public works welcome to Reverend Townsend today.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. I am excited to be here. I was just telling Sister Rachel that DPW is one of my favorite places in the city because I just love seeing the diversity that exists here. But not only does the diversity exist, it's real. People come here, work, go to work with each other, frequently from totally different backgrounds, and end up becoming real friends, real partners, and then find out that though they may have some differences in sense of heritage, race, whatever, they find out that everybody pretty much wants the same thing in life. And I'm always kind of depressed because our government gets in such a strange way, because it really wouldn't take that much to make most of us happy. A decent place to live, a good life and education and future for your children, a vacation every now and then that's paid for, decent health care. It really ain't that complicated, but somehow we can't deliver on that. But maybe our conversations today and in the future, if we keep talking, will help us reach those aims if we decide that we get more done working together than working at odds with one another.
Thank you. So I'm really excited to talk about the topics that we have set up for today. What I would like to speak about in the precursor is basically speaking about your upbringing and what brought you to San Francisco.
Thank you. I'll try to get through it real quick. It's a little complicated. I was born actually in Phoenix, Arizona. And somebody's saying, how in the heck did that happen? I was conceived in Oklahoma in a little all-black town in Oklahoma called Rentersville. You probably don't know this because we're not teaching a lot of what we should, but Oklahoma at one time had 28 all-black towns. The first troops were settled, the first settlements in Oklahoma were built by Black troopers after the Civil War. You know them pretty much as the Buffalo Soldiers. And Lincoln, had he not been killed when he had not been assassinated, he was getting ready to make Oklahoma a Black state that would have been run and governed by Black people. Fascinatingly, it would have become so wealthy, we'd have probably been invaded 3 or 4 times by now. But and if you think I'm joking, look up Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, if you want to know about invading wealthy places owned by Black people, because that's exactly what happened there. But I was born in Arizona because before they could, if there were complications with the birth, because most of the kids born in those days, 1943, were birthed by midwives. But if there was a complication, getting to a hospital that would treat us would be a long ways away. There were closer hospitals, but they didn't take Black people. So I went to Arizona. They took me, my mother went to Arizona to deliver me, and I was born in a Native American Catholic father's clinic, and then taken back to Oklahoma and was raised in that all-Black town till I was till about 7 years old, and we left our farm and went to Los Angeles, California, where I grew up, received all of my schooling up to college. Then I went to college in a place just outside LA, To be perfectly honest, I went to college only to play baseball. And I played a little basketball while I was there, but that was something to do till baseball season came. And I dropped out of college trying to talk to the White Sox and Phillies, trying to get them to give me a little more money. And while I was negotiating, I got a letter from Uncle Sam from the United States that drafted me into the Army. And I went away to Colorado and Korea for the next 2 years.
So how did we get to San Francisco?
So I told you I started college to play baseball. After I got out of the Army in 1967 in Korea, I wanted to finish college. I was a little more serious about the academic side of it. And I was trying to decide where to go. And it's a good story, but I can only tell most of you off camera. So you can ask me after it's over. But a friend of mine who was in the Army with me got out before, and he was a grad student at San Francisco State. And he remembered that we really thirsted for literature in the Army, good literature. So he would send me books and magazines and publications. And he sent me publications from San Francisco State, the Gator, the newspaper. And there was a literary magazine they had at that time called Open Process. And what I read and what I read about San Francisco State, I thought this sounded like a good place for me to go to school and finish my education. So I came here after I got out of the Army in 1967. Got here, got a job at the post office out at the airport, the airmail facility. And I'll tell you this because it's a good story. I would pick up, my ride would come to pick me up, but I wouldn't let them pick me up at home because I would go down on the Visadero in front of the Both And Jazz Club, which was on the Viz. I don't know, none of y'all look old enough to remember, but it was on the Viz between Oak and Page. And when I say Jazz Club, Miles Davis, all the top, John Coltrane, Lee Morgan, the best jazz performers in the world played there. And I would stand in front. Now, I wasn't a preacher then. I would stand in front and wait for my ride and listen to jazz and smoke a joint so I could be ready, to go to work. So I wasn't the only one. So you guys complain about how you get your mail. Y'all don't know. Y'all lucky you got it at all. Okay, so we was about it at work. So one night I'm standing there and two fellas walked up and asked me if I had another one, and I gave them one. I gave them both one because I was trying to make customers, and they turned out to be. They're both deceased now. You may have heard their names if you're from Fillmore, and if you don't know them, your people knew them. George Colbert and Speedy Woods, who became 50, I just eulogized both of them 2 years ago, who became 50-year plus friends. We met in front of the Both And Jazz Club. And they're the ones who got me enrolled in San Francisco State and introduced me really to my life here in San Francisco, where I've been for the last 56 years.
Oof. So
most of y'all ain't that old yet.
Not even close. The beauty of that is that segues us into our topic for today. So our theme on Black History Month here at Public Works this year is Black Resistance. So today we want to chronicle and hear a bit of the firsthand account of the 1968 student protests at San Francisco State when Reverend Arnold Townsend was a student. So I did a deep dive. I tried to get as much info as I can. And here's just a few things that I think I'd like to put out first before we go to a video. Most students, as he just said, most students who went to San Francisco State typically were working class. They typically worked through school. As he said, he had a job when he went there. It was typically looked at as the universities and maybe surrounding universities as the rich kids' school, the school where people who were better off would probably go to. The state of California had been spending $6 for every university student for every dollar that was spent for state college students' education. In the fall of 1968, San Francisco State College was the scene of the longest and bitterest college strike to hit an American campus, still to this day. This strike continued for 5 long months, and at its height, the campus was virtually closed down, and over 80% was not attending class, and they were supporting the strike. We're gonna go to a quick video, a 50th anniversary. Ooh. Okay, hold on. Let me get my Zoom out. Hold on.
We're going into the buildings as a mass, and we're going to ask people to come out of classes. And the point is, we're saying that people are going to come out of classes, and this school's going to be closed down. This school's on strike until he meets with us, until he meets those demands.
Every time he smiles at me, I can't keep my body still. Now I may lose my mind, for he is one of a kind.
Get out, get out.
They grabbed me, threw me up against the wall, told me I was under arrest. I asked why. They did not tell me. I am a student. I am a student. I can be in any building I wish.
Get back, Steve! Get back, Steve! Get back, Steve! Get back, Steve!
They went out in support of the student demands of that little dissident group with their 15 non-negotiable demands. You talk about negotiating. I would call to your attention that the Black Student Union has declared that their demands are non-negotiable.
While we are in here trying to engage ourselves in a discussion and civil debate, what they're doing is behind our back. They're disregarding the objective of this convocation by continuing classes. They are seeking to maintain order and keep injustice at the same time.
Council of Academic Deans approved the implementation of Black Studies Department with full faculty power commensurate with that accorded all other departments at the college.
Today, in every classroom, every students that met began to discuss for the first time, seriously and concretely, the issues involved. There are a lot of people that are very confused. There are a lot of people who don't really understand why anything happened or what will be the outcome of it. But for the first time, they're discussing those issues. They're searching for the real meanings of everything that's troubling us in a microcosm here, which is the same thing that's troubling us in the overall country. And I think that, as the main achievement of what took place, is a fantastic victory.
On strike, we'll be back. 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 On strike.
All right. So I don't know if I said it prior to us, showing that video, but the reason why the strike began, what was the cause of the strike, was the Black Student Union and other students wanted Black studies and an ethnic studies to be taught at the school. They had whatever conversations they had with the administration, and then it was not given. And the students decided to strike. I don't know if I covered that before. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna go to a few questions that I have for the Reverend, And I want you guys, if you have any questions, to think about what those questions are, because when we get through those questions, we're going to open it up to where you're able to ask him any questions that you may have regarding this specific protest or Black resistance in general. And that's also for the Zoom. Just be sure to put your questions in the chat for us, please. So we can go to the next slide, to questions, Clint. All right. Can you explain what started the strike and what it was like to be there during the time? Right. What were the peers and your friends saying and feeling?
Thank you, and I'm glad you read that. These old eyes don't work that on print that small. I think it would be interesting for you to know that what you just saw at the time that was happening, I was a young man then. I'll be 80 in May. But I was 24 then. Oh, I was killing them too, but that's another story. I'll tell you that on the way home. Anyway, at that time, there was no such thing as Black studies anywhere in the United States on any college campus, except at some of the HBCU, the historically Black colleges in the South. When I was in elementary school, junior high, and high school in Los Angeles, I knew some Black history because my mom and pop, being from the South, had gone to colored schools, you know, segregated schools. And yes, you learned something about your culture in those days. But most of my friends had no clue. And so we started to look at things. The Black students on campus started to look and question what they were being taught. I remember sitting in a class at LA City College the summer I graduated from high school, and I'm listening, and a young lady came in, and she was going to UCLA, but this was summer school at LA City College. And she got up and tore the textbook that the professor was using apart, citing all the falsehoods. She was an Asian young woman, and she was pointing out the untruths in the textbook, especially as it related to people of color. I was in shock because at that moment, I didn't know you could have disagreed with a book. I thought if it was in a book, it must be true. And from that moment on, my entire academic life was changed because I learned to question. So at this time in 1966, 67, Black students at San Francisco State started to question what they were being taught and what they were not being taught. So they got together and proposed a Black Studies department. They took it to the administration. They met with the president of the college and others in the faculty, and they said, good idea, we're going to do that. The problem was, then we broke for the summer. When we came back, they said they changed their mind because they had studied it and there was nothing academically worthy about the Black experience that it should be taught on a college level. And the Black students wasn't having it. They were not having that. I was still working nights at the post office, but I was trying to get in school. And so when they said they wasn't having it, there was some very ugly stuff that came out in the daily newspaper, the State College newspaper, the Daily Gator, and the Black Student Union marched on the Gator offices and went in and destroyed the office. There was some fisticuffs that ensued. I remember at home watching the news and a guy on Channel 7, and at that time, they were the most right-wing station in San Francisco. And one of the reporters showed the footprint that was in the middle of his back that one of the students had gave him as a souvenir because they went to the office and things went haywire. And I'll put it like that. And so the demand became serious. And after a series of meetings, the Black students walked off campus and asked the other students to join them. Well, you have to understand that Latino students, Asian students, Native American students, they found themselves in the same boat. And then as people thought about it, the women on campus, who the history of the suffrage movement and the other issues that women had and still have in the workforce and in life, they decided to join as a body. So the Black students and the other students of color, they met and said, well, if y'all gonna be in it, you need to be part of the decision-making process. So you had the BSU Central Committee, which was the leadership of the BSU, but then you had La Raza and the Asian Students Association. They decided to form with the Black students the Third World Liberation Front. And that was the group that made the decisions about how the strike would move and what it would do. And then because of, and as time grew, everybody started walking off campus. And at that point, the white students on campus got together and formed the White Strike Support Committee. So now we're all working together, working in unison, making decisions together, and we just walked off campus. And fascinatingly, I remember sitting in an English class, and the professor walked in and said, I just want y'all to know, you don't need to sit here because I'm on strike. And the majority of the faculty walked out too and supported the strike. And the campus was shut down for 5 months, the longest student strike in the history of this country.
November 68, March
69. Thank you. November 1968.
March.
Is what March was it March? Well, it started in November. You're right, March. And so because the Gator episode was in November. So officially it was March, you're right. And so we said our demands were non-negotiable. And that was done, number one, to let folk know we were serious. I think one of the things though that I really, before I forget, I want to mention that while most notably the thing that came out of the strike was Black studies, ethnic studies, women's studies, LGBTQ studies, none of that existed till Black studies. But you also need to know that for about 3 years, one of the things we demanded, one of our demands was open admissions. Everybody sitting in here that works, you pay for state college. Without you, it doesn't work. Why can't you go? The whole idea of, you got to have certain grades and all of this kind of stuff was to make the college experience as elitist as possible.
Sure.
So certain people couldn't go. And but for 3 years, about 3 years after the strike, we had open admissions where anybody could walk on campus and enroll in school. I got a partner of mine, he's retired now, but he had been in the life. Now, some of y'all know what that means. and hold on. And for the others of you, ask somebody who laughing right now after we get through. He was in the life. And I mean, he wasn't simping. Y'all know what I'm saying? You know what he was doing. He wasn't simping. And he had a crew. And he gave it up because he became a Panther and he went to college. Because he was able to walk on campus and enroll, he just retired as one of the leading child psychologists. Because the game he was in required psychology, right? Yeah, y'all know what I'm talking about. But he became one of the leading child psychologists in San Francisco. Being that he was African American, he was a demand everywhere to try to work with and help African American children. And even now, sometimes on cases, he gets called out of retirement. He tried to retire. They don't want him to. But that never would have happened. But he was able to walk on campus and just enroll. The fact that he hadn't finished high school, et cetera, didn't matter. And so there was so much important stuff that came out of this history. Now, what you saw there in the strike, I mean, that's just I can't even say it's the whole tip of the iceberg. It was way more serious than what you saw. When folk was talking about revolution that's come, it's time to pick up the gun. It was like that. I went to jail 3 times at San Francisco State. In fact, growing up in South Central LA, I never went to jail till I got in college. And they told me to go to college so I could avoid jail, et cetera, et cetera. But my folks didn't mind because they knew why I went to jail and what the cause was. All my parents are real militant folk. My mother was the first person I ever knew to own a Malcolm X album. So y'all understand why I'm a little crazy. But it's absolutely essential that we understand we were serious. And I want to tell you something real quick. At San Francisco State, right at the tail end of the strike, I got a call one Saturday morning. And they was like, Arnold, meet us at the off-campus center. We had an off-campus, the BHU had an off-campus center in Fillmore. And I went to the center and we'd had a fire. So water was all over the floor. And so the only place they said some people wanted to talk to us. Well, the only place we could talk was on the roof. And we went up on the roof, but we always used the roof. So we had chairs and stuff up there. And William F. Buckley was a U.S. News and World Report, looked the name of one of the leading conservatives at one time in the country. And the editors and publishers of Newsweek, Time, Life magazine wanted to interview us. So we met them there and we interviewed. And now some weeks after the interview, they went around the country interviewing Black militants. And after that, a few weeks after, they put out editorials and they said, these young people are not your children playing at revolution, but they're serious. We had stuck our chests out. We ain't playing. We were dumb. We didn't realize those were the finger men and women. After those articles came out, that's when cops started murdering Panthers and other militants all over the country. You probably heard of Fred Hampton, Bunchy Carter, and them in LA. People here to shoot out Bobby Hutton and all of that started after they interviewed us and wrote that we were serious about revolution. These children, and when they said we wanted to overthrow the government, what we wanted was change. The same thing we want today, 50 plus years later, 50 years later, we still want and need the same thing. The advances that we made with Black studies, they're taking back now. Rachel, you'll appreciate this. I just read an article where in Florida, they just banned 2 books. One is the life story of Willie Mays, and the other is the life story of Roberto Clemente. For y'all who don't know, one of the greatest baseball players to ever live, who was killed in a plane crash while he was delivering supplies to Nicaragua after a major earthquake and hurricane there. He was taking supplies to people who were homeless in the plane crash. And they just banned and don't want the children to know about those 2. After all the suffering, people died here. All the suffering that went on to make Black studies a reality. Go ahead. I told him to cut me off.
I'm trying.
Y'all can see this is what I do.
So we're gonna move on to question 2. That's great though. A lot of the things you spoke about speak to the other things that we're leading into, right? I just wonder, how would it be when you know what you're trying to do and then you look on the news or you look on some sort of publication and you see the president at the time, you saw that Reagan clip talking about your non-negotiable demands, but we're talking about trying to get Black studies implemented into school. We're not talking about a terrorist organization or nothing, but the tone in which it's said. So that leads us to our next question. What were the interactions like with police at that time? And what were your personal interactions? And do you have any personal accounts you'd like to share?
First of all, just to let you know what the relationship was like with the police.
Yeah.
You saw in the film, we called them pigs. And we meant it. I will say this. There's a lot of problems still with the police. The young man that was just murdered in Memphis, George Floyd, and the thousands of others that you know whose names you never heard, who went down as justifiable homicide. We still got problems. I would say the problems are not as severe then, but let me just let you know that every day for those 5 months, there were maybe 2 days when we didn't have, we announced there'd be no demonstration, but every day we were at State College, marching out in front, keeping the campus shut down and fighting the police every day. And when I said fighting, I'm talking about from the shoulders. And please know, police didn't win every day. And most days they didn't win. I just got out the Army. I still had my Army field jacket. And before I would leave for school in the morning, I would fill them big old pockets up. I would fill them up with marbles. Now, I had quit playing marbles a long time ago, but what happened, they brought the horses out and they would run us down on the horses and with their batons and beat us. But if you got marbles on the street and on the sidewalk, the horses can't run on the marbles. So when the police start chasing you, you be in your pocket just throwing your marbles. And pretty soon they quit bringing, because they didn't want the horse's legs to get broken. We didn't either. But, you know, we used to say, well, if the horse had any respect for himself, he wouldn't let a pig get on his back anyway. So, you know, well, it seemed reasonable at the time, let me say.
At the time.
But the interactions, not only did they have undercover, but cops on campus everywhere, FBI. I want to tell you something that we didn't know. Now, I was 24. I was one of the older guys because I've been in the Army, you see. So I was 24 and 25. And we were kids, but I didn't find out till just a couple of years ago. One of my dearest friends, Terry Collins, who's deceased now, Terry went and got his Freedom of Information Act. You can file for that, and the government has to give it to you. Some stuff they'll cross out, like the undercover agents' names and things like that, and they'll make you pay for however many pages. I want to get mine, but I got to make sure I got enough money because I know mine is thick. What we found out when Terry got his. Now remember, we were kids. We knew the FBI and Secret Service was around. But we found out that all the military services, Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force, that all of their intelligence units were surveilling us at this time. We were under constant surveillance, not only by who we expected to be surveilled by, but also by the military branches, because they saw us as a threat to the country. And we were a threat to the status quo. We were a threat to all the wrong that had been done. And you see changes now that exist, stuff you didn't have to go through because people there sacrificed. So you wouldn't, when that strike was over, couldn't almost none of us get jobs in the city. And if it wasn't for the Black, Latino, Asian businesses and community organizations that gave us jobs, we'd have starved to death. We couldn't get hired nowhere. But thank God, you know, now y'all would have trouble because we don't have the Black businesses that we used to have then.
Cool.
Go ahead.
That's great.
Keep
That's
going.
Great. So you spoke about it a little bit earlier, but I wanted to go to the third question now. And that is, can you talk to us about the Third Liberation Front? You kind of touched on it earlier and how it came together, but can you elaborate a little bit where it started, how it came together?
The Third World Liberation Front, like I said, was started because everyone, the strike was called by the BSU. The concept of walking off campus, that all came out of the BSU. And we were certainly in the leadership, but we weren't going to ask people to fight with us and for themselves and no say so about how they was gonna get out. So we then had to move from just the BSU to creating, to be fair, to creating a group where everybody had a say so how we was gonna move forward. And even as we would organize certain kind of actions every day for the strike, we met and jointly decided that there were some brothers out there, Tony Miranda, Juan Jimenez, Roger Alvarado. These are all partners of mine, people, Roberto Vargas, one of the greatest poets. He's from here. All these folk is from here. He's Nicaraguense, but during when the Sandinitas jumped off in Nicaragua, we were all like, "Where's Roberto? What happened to him?" We found out, we saw somebody send some pictures back, and he was in his fatigues, military fatigues, with his rifle fighting with the Sandinistas against the Somoza regime. Then he came home and just most recently worked for Hugo Chavez in Nicaragua. And y'all know the country I'm trying to think about. It'll come to me in a minute, but he's been working there. So there is so much that came out of that strike. The idea that if we're going to be successful as a people in creating a healthy future for our children, we've got to learn together, to work together. That don't mean we won't have differences. You got to learn to fight and cuss each other out through your differences and then get back to the job. Once you get that straight, get it settled, come to an understanding, but don't quit. Don't break up. I had a friend of mine told me, he wasn't speaking to me. Then he made my friend again and said, "Well, I know you was mad." I said, "Hold on. I wasn't never mad at you. You was mad at me." Because at my age, I don't break fellowship. If I have fellowship with somebody, friends too hard to come by, y'all. I'm not cutting you a loose. You got to do something. If you leave the babies alone, it's pretty hard to do something to make me fall out with you alone. You ain't mess with them babies. We can work it out. It's what I believe. I'm trying to recognize.
Hey, so this is stuff that we've spoken about before and something that you touched on earlier. But moving on to my last question that I have, and if anybody has any questions after we go through this, you'll feel free to ask him any questions yourself. What is critical race theory? Let me get through all of them things. What are your thoughts on the controversy around critical race theory and states that are trying to ban it?
That's an excellent question. And you come with these by yourself?
And yeah. I kind of did a little bit.
I don't know. I'm trying to find out who's helping you. Somebody. Critical race theory, I don't even know why they call it that. Really, it talks about
slang termism now.
What that really means is critically looking at the issues of race in this country.
Tell the truth.
Because I am convinced that what has held this country back from becoming the great place it could become is race. Race is at the heart of everything, but also understand racism exists for a reason. Because as long as I can keep you fighting against each other because you're different colors, I can rob you blind. Let me tell you something. Y'all remember Lyndon, if you don't remember your history class, the name of Lyndon Johnson from Texas? He was a vice president, and when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, he became the president, then he won the next election. Lyndon Johnson, but he was a congressman for about 30, 40 years out of Texas. Lyndon Johnson said, tell a poor white man he's better than the black man, and you can steal from him all day long. But if you tell him that he's better than the best black man, you won't have to steal from him. He'll bring it to you. What am I saying? If I can keep you all fighting at each other, I can create a tax structure that favors the rich and makes you broke. But as long as I tell you, yeah, I know I'm screwing over you, but you know I'm gonna keep them, you know what's in their place. You're gonna run out and vote for them. But when you get to know me, as I said when I started, and you get to know, I want the same thing for my kid that you want. When our boys are playing ball with each other, y'all know when you was in school and played ball together, and cats played with you, girls played with you that may have been a different race, and how tight y'all became when y'all was in the fight together. If we can get it all across that we're in the fight together, things will change. And that's why critical race theory ain't just because they hate Black people, but if we start getting along, we lose our power. They lose their power. And they can't afford that. They could, but they don't want to. So is why they don't want race history. And really it's just Black history. But they say race because they don't want Black history. They don't want Asian history. They don't want you to know about the suffragette movement of Susan B. Anthony and the others in the last century when they were out working for the rights of women. I told y'all about my mama a little bit. Let me tell you what women are expected to do. I came home from junior high one evening after practice, and there was a brand new 55 Fords in our driveway, and this is 1955. I walked in and we didn't have no company, and I said, we got a new car? He said, yeah, me and your mama. You ain't putting no money in on it. Yeah, we got a new car. So, but I was, proud. And so we had dinner that night. I was the only child. And so we had dinner that night. Mom got up, cleared up table, and me and my daddy sitting there talking. She goes in the bedroom. She come out with her coat on, and she take the car keys and throw them in front of my daddy. My daddy said, where are we going? She said, you going to teach me how to drive. And he said, you gonna learn how to drive? She said, you don't think I'm fitting to pay for a car that I can't drive? I signed those papers too. Now, I thank God I had the mother that I had, because I didn't have, and she had some sisters who were strong women too. So I learned about what you say and don't say to and about women at a very young age. But that made me a progressive man as I got here to San Francisco and got older. And so I didn't have a lot of issues. But the point I'm trying to make is that's the kind of subjugation that women are expected to be under, that she gonna work hard, pay for a car that only he can drive, and that he can take to the other woman's house. If we're gonna talk about fairness, she ought to be able to get in and slip to her dude's house every now and then, I know some of y'all men don't like that, but I believe in keeping it real. And hold on. And if you do it and you think she ain't doing or ain't thinking about doing, then you're a bigger fool than I give you credit for.
All right.
Go ahead, move on.
Moving on. So I'm gonna go to my last question, which is pretty general. And as I look in the chat at some of the questions, I see we literally basically have the same question from our superintendent here at SCS, Chris McDaniels. The question is, what are your hopes for the Black community in the next 10, 50, 100 years?
My hopes for the Black community, first of all, in 100 years, when I come back, no, but my hopes are, number one, that we would become full citizens with full rights. I am hopefully praying hard that the negativity that abounds in our community, more than it should because of the system we live under, that we will learn to outgrow what they try to do to us. Let me say, to overcome. If any people are going to be free, you have to overcome the fact that you don't have as much as others. You have to overcome the fact that folks are trying to keep you down. But the first step to doing that is overcoming the hatred and anger we have to each other. They asked me a similar question at San Francisco State about what did I want for young people. I want y'all to get mad at what's being done to us in the Black community, and that get mad about what we allow to be done to us. Because it wouldn't work if we didn't hate on each other. My problem is we don't get mad at our oppressors. All y'all seem to do is get mad at each other. We were talking about that a minute ago. It's got to be some self-hatred when you kill a dude that looked like you because he dissed you. Now, this is somebody you ran into or bumped into on the sidewalk, ain't gonna never see each other again, but you so mad that you're willing to do a life sentence because he stepped on your shoe, because he dissed you, and you're gonna do life over that? I'm sorry, I ain't that important. Because guess what? As soon as I turn the corner, I will never see that dude again. And in about an hour, it would never, you wouldn't even remember that it ever happened. When are we going to overcome? Because this is the stuff that keeps us from advancing into becoming the amazing people that we are. I would suggest everybody here start to learn about Black history, start to learn about your history. I'm gonna tell you this real quick. I got a picture on my phone. I can show it to you. It's a picture of 3 African tribesmen. They're wearing the robes, they got the spears, they got the drawings on their face, and they Black, way darker than me. And it says, these are early inhabitants of Ecuador. You get me? We all in this together, y'all. Have you ever seen statues of the Olmecs, the first inhabitants of Mexico? They're African. We're all in this together. The only thing that everybody in this room has in common, and I don't care what color you are, has in common is African DNA. Because Africans were first. So in other words, everybody in this room is cousins at least. And when are we going to start living out that reality, then a false reality that, because there is no such thing as race. We're different colors. We're not different people. We may act different, some of us act a little crazy than others, but we are the same people no matter. That's why I can take your heart, and if the doctor, something happened to you, thank God you filled out that thing and said, I'm a donor. They can give me your heart and it'll beat in my chest just like it did yours, man. If we were different, that wouldn't work. Hey, a horse's heart won't work in you. You get me? So what I hope for our future as Black people, but as all people, that we begin to understand the connectedness and how important it is. Look here. He got 2 little girls, 8 and 4. I don't want them to still have to be dealing with this stuff when they get to high school that I dealt with and that my parents dealt with and their parents before them. When? And we've got to demand it or we'll never receive it. And as long as you hate the cat next door, because he keep parking in your driveway, more than you hate the cat that won't even let you make enough money to buy a house with a driveway, then you ain't gonna never be successful, not really. And you're not gonna ever be happy.
Thank you for that. So now we want to open up if anybody has any questions. And as far as our people who are here with us via Zoom, if you have any questions for Reverend Townsend, please just drop it in the chat and we will read it out loud and he'll answer it. Anybody?
Yeah, I want to say thank you, Corey.
You can pick up.
Inviting the Reverend down. And Reverend, I just can't thank you enough for sharing your life's experience and story. It was heartfelt and moving. So the words and the stories you share with us will stick with us. And I thank you so very much.
Thank you. And let me say this. I am excited to be here because I'm reaching an age, if I didn't say it before, in May, I make 80. Ain't that bad? Now, hold on. Now, it ain't always been like this, but it still ain't that bad. But as I reach 80, one thing I do know, that if all the knowledge that I've acquired goes into the grave with me and I never pass it on, then I'm out of line. Then you have lived a wasted life if you've got nobody to pass it on to. And let me tell you this, quit worrying about the TV, the information that the TV is giving your children and how they influencing them to be gay and all this stuff. Y'all keep on talking that crazy stuff. If TV got more influence over your child than you do, TV ain't out of line. You out of line for leaving your child up to other folks. So quit tripping on that. And then for those subjects that you keep fighting over, learn what that's about. Because as long as they keep dividing us by gender, by our sexual preference, all they're doing is diluting the troops. We go into battle with less folk because we keep on making these judgments that ain't got nothing to do with your tomorrow. What do I care what two dudes or two women do over there? What does that got to do with me? And I bring that up because we've got to make the struggle full for everyone to be looked at and treated as a human being, or we'll never get anywhere. Now, I'm not saying don't love Jesus. Two things. Don't take it out on other people. And number two, make sure you know who and what Jesus loved before you go too far. It's in the book, study.
Go ahead, Red.
I just want to say thank you to Reverend Townsend. Thank you very much. You spoke a little bit on history. I just want to know how important it is for us to know our history, because I've heard you don't know where you're going if you don't know who you're fighting.
That is so true. We are a product of the history that's behind us. But I do want to say something because I hear something all the time that is so wrong. When bad things happen, sometimes we say, well, you know, history repeats itself. That's a lie. History is benign. History just sits and waits to be made. The problem is not history repeats itself. The problem is people keep on repeating history, even though they got evidence that it didn't work the last time. You got people in this country that want to get the Civil War on again. It didn't work last time. But they're willing for thousands to die to try something that ain't gonna work. And please pay attention to old people when they tell you it ain't gonna work. I got some things that my daddy told me. Ooh, if I'd have listened, I'd be rich today.
You told me too.
Listen, it didn't work for him. That's how he knows that it ain't gonna work for me. Please.
We got 3 minutes left. Do we have any more questions, Deshaun?
The message and experience that you learned today, how do you use that experience to change the youth that are awakened, that are mad, that are angry?
Well, first of all, the one word that I would give to the youth, and you should take out of here with you.
One second. Can you repeat that question?
Or can you repeat it so we can zoom?
I will. I'll repeat it once he repeats it.
The youth that are angry today, that are awakened, that do have a feeling or attitude to change, to create a change. How do you tell them to use that anger in a positive way where there's so much fear, motivating them to act in a negative way?
For you answer. How do you answer for everybody on the Zoom? His question was, what advice would he give to the angry youth who want to do something and don't necessarily know what to do with that energy?
Man, I thank you for that question. I would have hated to have gotten out of here without responding to that. I'll give you one word: organize. You hear all the old labor folk, union folk talk about that. The strike would have never happened. Black studies would never happen if we hadn't organized ourselves first, then organized with the Third World Liberation Front, organized with the White Strike Support Committee, organized with the faculty.
You got 1 minute, Doc.
That went on strike with us. Let me say one thing. I got 1 minute. I'm gonna say this to everybody in the room, everybody on Zoom. Please make sure that you do something for somebody else besides yourself. Do something for somebody who's hurting, because when you get to as late in life as I've gotten, the one thing you want to be sure of is that your life left a mark and not a stain. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody that came with Zoom as well.
Thank you, everyone.
I
The
enjoyed
recording is ending.
Thank you, guys.